Hi, my name is Cassandra and I am a storyteller with the Arts Unleashed programme funded by the Grand Appeal. There was once a young girl who more than anything else in the world wanted to reach the stars. She didn't just want to look at them, no. She wanted to touch them to see what they were like. And of course her family said, no, you cannot reach the stars. You'll be wanting to go to the moon next. Come, sit down. Come, do your homework. Come, there are chores to be done. And she would sit by the firelight and do as she was told. But in her heart she dreamed of the night that might be the one where she could reach the stars. And so, one night, on the longest night of the year, midwinter night, she lay in bed with the covers drawn up tight, fast asleep, and then she woke, and there was a light coming through the curtains, starlight shining bright, and she reached up and she opened the curtains wider, and the light shone down on her. It was so bright. It was as if the stars were saying to her, come to us tonight. Tonight you will reach the stars. And how could she resist? She got out of bed with the feeling that this one night she just might fulfill her dream. And as quietly as she could, she put on her clothes, and as quietly as she could, she crept downstairs. And as silent as the night, she slid open the bolts of the door and opened it, and was about to walk out into the night when she saw the frost on the ground, and she realised her mistake. In her haste to get out, she had forgotten her shoes, and her feet were bare, and she looked at the cold, cold night. But she knew that if she was to turn around and go back upstairs, the spell might be broken and she might never have another chance. And so she took a deep breath and she took one step out into the night. And the cold went up from the frosty ground and into her toes, and they turned blue. But she took another deep breath and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking into the starry, starry night. And she followed the light through her garden and out at the garden gate and into the woods behind her home. And as she walked between the trees following that light, she came to a stream. And the light of the stars led her across the stream. So she pulled up her trousers and she began to walk into the icy, cold water. And she could feel the cold go up her toes and into her knees, but she looked straight ahead and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking out of the stream, and she dried her feet as best she could on the cold, cold grass, and then she carried on walking, she carried on walking, she carried on walking through the trees to the edge of the forest. Where the trees parted, there was a lake, so wide she could not see from one side to another, so deep she could not see the bottom. But the light of the stars led her across, and so she dived into the cold, cold water and swam and swam. And the cold went up from her toes to the top of her head, and she shivered as she swam and swam out the other side. And she shook herself off, and she took a deep breath, and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, until she came to a hill, and the hill went up and up and up until it almost reached the stars. And there at the top of the hill, she saw the faint shape of figures dancing, and they shone as brightly as the stars. Was this the star folk come down to earth? She did not know, but she followed the path up the hill, and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, and the path grew steeper and steeper and steeper, but she carried on walking, she carried on walking, she carried on walking, until she reached the top. And there, surrounding her, were people that shone as brightly as the stars. They were the fair folk come down to earth. And she said, "Stop, please. Can someone help me? Please, can you tell me, how might I reach the stars?" And they looked at her and said, "You, little girl?" "Yes," she said, "please." "If you want to reach the stars," they said, "you must answer this riddle. You must walk down this hill, looking neither left nor right. And then you must look for 4 feet and ask 4 feet to carry you to no feet. And then you must ask no feet to carry you to the stairs without steps. And then you must climb the stairs without steps. And then will I reach the stars?" Perhaps was all they said. But perhaps was all she needed. "Very well," she said, "I accept." And she turned and looked, and there was no path down the hill. But she remembered seeing the tightrope walkers in the circus, and how they stretched their arms out wide, and then they walked 1 foot in front of the other, as straight as an arrow, never walking to the left, or never walking to the right, and always, always staring straight ahead like an arrow. And so she followed them down and down and down, like a tightrope walker she walked, neither looking left nor right. But she carried on walking, she carried on walking, and she carried on walking, until she got to the bottom of the hill. And there she saw a tree, and under the tree she saw an animal. What animal do you think that could be? Which animal has 4 feet? Yes. There, under the tree, was a silver horse, and she looked and counted his feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. "Are you 4 feet?" And the horse said, which means yes. "And will you carry me to no feet?" And the horse said, which means yes. So she climbed onto the horse's back and held on tight to his silver shining mane, and the horse took off, and they began to gallop and gallop and gallop through the land, following the starry, starry light. And as they galloped, she saw the dawn just appearing ahead of them. And then the horse stopped at the edge where the land meets ocean, and the horse stopped by the waves, as if to say, "This is as far as I can go." And she got off the horse's back and thanked him and looked out over the sea. And she could see in the distance, there ahead of her were the stars, and reaching up from the sea to the stars was a rainbow. And she wondered, is the rainbow the stairs without steps? But how will I reach it? And then she saw something dancing, diving out of the water towards her, a silver shining light. It was a dolphin, and the dolphin stopped at the edge of the water, and his bright eyes looked at her. And she said, "Are you no feet?" And out of the water spout on its head, said the dolphin, which means yes. "And will you carry me to the stairs without steps?" said the dolphin. And she climbed on his salty, sticky back, and she held on tight, and the dolphin dived down and then shot up, and dived down and then shot up, and dived down and then shot up, right to the edge of the rainbow. He stopped, rocking gently, as if to say, "This is as far as I can go." And she climbed onto his back, and she reached up to touch the rainbow, and it was as cold as ice and as slippery. How can you climb a stairs without steps when they are made of ice? But Then she remembered the circus once more and seeing the trapeze artists who pulled themselves up and up and up and up. And she stood on the dolphin's back and she reached up and grabbed hold of the rainbow and pulled herself up and up and up and up. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, indigo. She stood on the top of the rainbow, her feet curled round the icy edge, and there were the stars just within reach. She stretched, and then she fell and tumbled down and down and down and down, curling, twisting, falling, curling, twisting, falling, back into sleep. And when she woke the next day, the bright sunshine was pouring in. And she thought, was that just a dream? It had to be, right? People don't reach the stars. Not people like me. But then she noticed her hands that were curled tight, and she opened them. And there was a speck of stardust shining bright. And she took that speck of stardust and she carried it for the rest of her life. And then she passed that light to her children, who passed it to their children, who passed it to their children, so that I could pass this story to you.